The lock clicked with such finality that I almost didn't register the cold at first. I stood on the porch in my thin cotton nightgown, one hand pressed against the growing swell of my belly at 7 months, the other still raised from knocking. Through the frosted glass panel beside the door, I could see movement. Shadows passing back and forth in the warm yellow light of what used to be my home. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Please, I called out, my breath forming small clouds in the December air. David, it's freezing out here. This isn't funny. The shadow paused, then continued walking away. My bare feet were already numb against the ice-crusted welcome mat. The mat I'd chosen last spring, with its cheerful yellow flowers. Everything changes, I thought distantly. Everything. David! I pounded harder now, my voice cracking. The baby? You should have thought about that baby before you embarrassed this family. Patricia's voice came through the door, sharp and clear despite the barrier between us. My mother-in-law, the woman who had smiled at our wedding while already planning my removal from her son's life. Before you made a spectacle of yourself at dinner tonight. The dinner. God, the dinner. I pressed my forehead against the cold door frame, remembering. Patricia had invited her country club friends, the Hendersons and the Whitfields. Old money families who treated their silverware with more respect than they treated their staff. I'd tried so hard to be perfect, to be the daughter-in-law she wanted. But then Mrs. Henderson had made that comment about my background. Where did you say you grew up, dear? I don't recognize the town name. Is it near anything important? The way she'd said it, like my entire childhood could be measured by its proximity to places that mattered to her. I'd smiled through it, just like I'd smiled through Patricia's corrections of my table manners, my posture, my laugh. But when Patricia herself had started explaining to the table why David had married beneath his station, as a youthful indiscretion he was too noble to correct, something inside me had cracked. I'd stood up, placed my napkin beside my plate with perfect precision, and said exactly what I'd been holding back for 2 years. I may not have grown up with a trust fund, Patricia, but at least I grew up knowing the difference between class and cruelty. You've spent this entire evening trying to make me feel small, and I'm done pretending I don't notice. The silence had been spectacular. Mrs. Henderson's fork had actually clattered against her plate. Mr. Whitfield had coughed into his wine, and Patricia's face had gone from alabaster to scarlet in seconds. David had grabbed my wrist under the table, his fingers digging in hard enough to leave marks. Apologize, he'd hissed, right now. But I hadn't. I'd pulled my arm free and walked to our bedroom upstairs, my heart pounding with the terrifying freedom of finally telling the truth. That had been 3 hours ago. I'd changed into my nightgown, taken my prenatal vitamins, and waited for David to come upstairs so we could talk about it like adults. Instead, I'd heard the guests leaving, Patricia's voice rising in the foyer, and then silence. At midnight, I'd gotten thirsty. The baby always made me thirsty, especially at night. I'd padded downstairs in bare feet, not wanting to wake anyone, and found Patricia and David in the kitchen, speaking in urgent whispers. Cannot continue like this, Patricia was saying. She's ruining you, David. Your reputation, your standing. I know, Mother, I know. I'd frozen in the doorway, my hand on my belly. You have options, Patricia had continued. The Whitfields mentioned their son is going through a divorce. Clean, quiet, no drama. The kind of woman you should have married. Once this... She'd gestured vaguely in the direction of the stairs, meaning me. Situation is resolved. The baby's mine, Mother. I can't just... You can do whatever you need to do. You're a Aldridge, David. We don't let mistakes define us. We correct them. I must have made a sound because they'd both turned. Patricia's eyes had narrowed with satisfaction, like she'd wanted me to hear. David had just looked tired. I was just getting water, I'd said quietly. Of course you were, Patricia had replied. Always lurking, always listening. Well, you heard what you came to hear, didn't you? Now you know exactly where you stand. David? I'd looked at my husband, the man who'd promised to love me forever just 2 years ago. The man whose baby was currently kicking against my ribs. Tell her she's wrong. But he hadn't. He'd just stood there, caught between his mother and his wife, and chosen his mother with his silence. So I'd said the words I'd been too afraid to say out loud. I want a divorce. Patricia had smiled then. Actually smiled. How convenient. David, show your wife to the door. She can collect her things tomorrow. Tonight, I think she needs to cool off and consider her situation. Maybe a bit of discomfort will help her understand what she's throwing away. Mother, it's 20 degrees outside. Then perhaps she shouldn't have chosen tonight to throw a tantrum, should she? And David, my husband, the father of my unborn child, had taken my arm and walked me to the front door. I'd been too shocked to resist at first, thinking surely he would stop, would say something, would choose me. Instead, he'd opened the door and gently but firmly guided me onto the porch. You can't be serious, I'd whispered. David, I'm pregnant. I'm barefoot. I have nowhere to go. My mother's right. You need to learn there are consequences. His voice had been soft, almost apologetic. Almost. You embarrassed her in front of her friends, Emma. You embarrassed me. Maybe a few hours out here will help you understand the kind of life you're jeopardizing. A few hours? David, I could die out here. The baby. Don't be dramatic. You can go to a neighbor's house if you're really that uncomfortable. But you're not coming back inside until you're ready to apologize to my mother and mean it. Then he'd closed the door. And locked it. That had been 20 minutes ago. Now I was shivering so hard my teeth were chattering. My nightgown was soaked through from the light snow that had started falling. My feet had gone from numb to painfully burning, and I knew that wasn't good. Nothing about this was good. I pulled out my phone, thank God I'd grabbed it automatically, and tried to call David again. It rang once, then went to voicemail. He'd declined the call. My fingers were shaking so badly I could barely navigate to my contacts. Who could I call? My parents were gone, both of them, lost to a car accident 3 years ago. That's how I'd met David, actually, at a grief counseling group. He'd lost his father the year before. We'd bonded over loss, over understanding what it meant to have a hole in your life where a parent used to be. I'd thought Patricia would be glad to have me in the family, another woman to fill some of that emptiness. Instead, she'd seen me as a threat to her position as the most important woman in David's life. Friends? Most of mine had drifted away after the wedding. Patricia didn't approve of them. Too common, too loud, too everything she wasn't. And I'd been stupid enough to let them go, thinking I was building a new life, a better life. My sister. I could call my sister. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, like this video, it means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. Julia answered on the third ring, her voice thick with sleep. Emma? It's almost 1 a.m. Is the baby okay? Jules. My voice broke on her name. Can you come get me? Please? I'm at David's house and they locked me out and I can't. They what? Suddenly she was wide awake. Who locked you out? Emma, are you outside? Right now? David and Patricia. We had a fight and they... Jules, I'm so cold. My feet hurt and the baby keeps moving like she knows something's wrong and I don't know what to do. I'm already getting dressed. Stay on the phone with me. Don't hang up, okay? I'm 30 minutes away, but I'm coming right now. Can you get to somewhere less exposed? A car? A shed? The garage, I said, my mind working slowly through the cold fog. There's a side door. It's usually unlocked. Go there. Right now. Keep talking to me. I stumbled off the porch, my feet screaming with pain as they hit the frozen grass. The motion sensor lights clicked on, flooding the yard with harsh white light. Through the living room window, I could see Patricia sitting in her wingback chair, a glass of wine in her hand, staring straight ahead. Not looking at me. Not coming to help. She knew I was out here suffering, and she was having a drink to celebrate it. The side door to the garage opened with a creak that sounded like a scream in the quiet night. Inside, it was marginally warmer, protected from the wind and snow at least. David's Mercedes sat gleaming in the dim light from my phone screen. $40,000 on wheels, more than he'd spent on our entire wedding. I'm in the garage, I told Julia, my whole body shaking now. Good. That's good, Emma. Now listen to me. You need to stay warm. Are there any blankets? Towels? Anything? I looked around, my eyes adjusting to the darkness. Tools hung neatly on the walls, paint cans stacked in perfect rows. And there, on a shelf, there's a tarp, and some old jackets on hooks. Painting clothes, I think. Use everything. Wrap yourself up. Sit down against the wall, away from the door. Conserve your body heat. I'm driving as fast as I can. I did as she said, wrapping the musty-smelling tarp around my shoulders and pulling on 2 jackets that smelled like paint thinner and motor oil. Then I slid down the wall and sat on the cold concrete, pulling my knees up as much as my pregnant belly would allow. Jules, I said softly into the phone, I think I made a terrible mistake marrying him. Yeah, sweetie, I think you might have. Her voice was gentle but honest. Julia had never liked David, though she'd hidden it well enough at the wedding. Smiled for photos, made a toast about new beginnings. But afterward she'd pulled me aside and said, just promise me if anything ever feels wrong, you'll call. Day or night. Promise me. I'd promised. And now here I was. I should have listened to you, I whispered. You tried to tell me he was too attached to his mother, that Patricia was manipulative, but I thought I could make it work. I thought love was enough. Love should be enough, Julia said fiercely, but it has to go both ways. And right now, I'm pretty sure locking your pregnant wife out in the cold in December isn't love. That's something else entirely. The baby kicked hard, as if agreeing. I placed my hand over the movement, trying to send warmth and reassurance through my palm. I'm sorry, I thought. I'm so sorry I brought you into this mess. 20 minutes, Julia said. I'm almost to the highway. Stay with me, Em. But my eyes were getting heavy. The cold that had been sharp and painful was becoming something softer, more distant, almost comfortable. That scared me more than the pain had. Jules, I'm really tired. No, Emma, no. Don't fall asleep. Talk to me. Tell me about the baby. Have you picked out a name yet? Sophia, I murmured. After Mom. David doesn't know yet. He wanted to name her Patricia. Of course he did, Julia said darkly. Well, Sophia's perfect. Mom would have loved that. What else? What's your nursery going to look like? I don't know if there's going to be a nursery anymore. The words came out slurred. I said I wanted a divorce, Jules. I finally said it out loud. Good. That's good, Emma. You and Sophia deserve so much better than this. And you're going to get it, I promise. But first, you need to stay awake. 15 minutes. Can you do that for me? I tried to answer, but my teeth were chattering too hard. The tarp crinkled as my shaking intensified. Somewhere in the distance, I heard a car door slam. Voices. But they sounded underwater, distorted. Emma? Emma? The garage door was opening, but not the door I'd come through. The big door, the one for the cars, rising with its mechanical whir. Light flooded in, blinding me. There you are. Patricia's voice sharp with irritation. Making a scene as usual. David, get her up. The neighbors' lights are on. We can't have them seeing this. Strong hands grabbed my arms, hauling me to my feet. The tarp fell away. I tried to stand, but my legs wouldn't support me. She's freezing, Mother. Her lips are blue. Then perhaps next time she'll think twice before acting like a spoiled child at dinner. Patricia. A new voice, male but not David's. Dr. Whitfield? She needs medical attention. Look at her. She's fine. Just dramatic. Emma has always had a flair for the theatrical. Her lips are blue and she's barely conscious. This isn't drama, this is hypothermia. Dr. Whitfield's hands were on my face, checking my pulse. How long has she been out here? Not long, Patricia said quickly. 20 minutes at most. She's exaggerating as usual. In a nightgown, barefoot, 20 minutes in this temperature? His voice was incredulous. Are you insane? She's 7 months pregnant. She's 7 months pregnant and throwing tantrums that affect my son's reputation, Patricia snapped back. Surely you understand the need for discipline, Harold. Discipline? This is abuse. David, call an ambulance right now. But I was already sliding back down the wall, my legs giving out entirely. The cold had moved past discomfort into something more dangerous. I could feel it in my chest, in my thoughts, in the way my heart seemed to be beating too slowly. The baby wasn't moving anymore. That thought cut through the fog with terrifying clarity. Sophia had stopped kicking. The baby, I managed to say, grabbing Dr. Whitfield's sleeve. Please, check the baby. His face went grim. Get her inside, now, and someone call 911. Harold, think about what this will do to the family's reputation. Damn your reputation! Dr. Whitfield roared at Patricia with such unexpected fury that even David stepped back. This woman and her child could die because of your vindictive nonsense, and you're worried about what the neighbors will think. David, pick up your wife and bring her inside immediately, or I'll do it myself and then I'll call the police. David finally moved, scooping me up in his arms. I should have felt relief, but all I felt was the absence of warmth, even from his body. He was carrying me like an obligation, not like someone he loved. Inside the house, they laid me on the couch. Patricia stood in the corner, her arms crossed, her face a mask of cold fury. Dr. Whitfield barked orders, blankets, warm water, anything to raise my body temperature slowly. His wife appeared with heated towels, her face ashen. I had no idea, Mrs. Whitfield kept saying. Patricia, you said she'd stormed out on her own, that she was at a hotel. You said... I said what needed to be said, Patricia replied coldly. The ambulance arrived 12 minutes later. By then, I'd regained enough feeling in my extremities to wish I hadn't. The pain was excruciating, but worse than the pain was the silence from my belly. Sophia still wasn't moving. Please, I begged the paramedics as they loaded me onto the stretcher. Please check my baby. She's not moving. She always moves. We've got you, ma'am. Heart rate is low but stable. We're taking you to County General. Is anyone riding with us? David stepped forward, but Dr. Whitfield blocked his path with one solid arm. No, the doctor said firmly. You've done enough. I'll go with her. You stay here and think about what you've allowed to happen tonight. As they wheeled me toward the ambulance, I heard Patricia's voice one last time, cold and commanding. Harold, remember our families have been friends for 40 years. What happens in the Aldridge house stays in the Aldridge house. Not anymore, Dr. Whitfield said quietly. Not after this. The ambulance doors closed, cutting off whatever response Patricia made. In the harsh fluorescent light, Dr. Whitfield's face looked older, tired. He took my hand gently. I'm sorry, he said. I should have stopped her earlier. Should have realized. He shook his head. What kind of monster locks a pregnant woman out in the cold? I wanted to tell him it wasn't his fault, that no one could have predicted Patricia would go this far. but I was too focused on my belly, willing Sophia to move. Just one kick, one flutter, anything. Please. I prayed to a God I wasn't sure I believed in anymore. Please let my baby be okay. Take anything else. My marriage, my home, my dignity. But please let my daughter live. The hospital lights blurred past the ambulance windows. Sirens wailed. And Julia's voice suddenly came through the paramedics' radio. She'd called the ambulance company, demanding updates. "Tell her I'm okay," I said weakly. "Tell her I'm sorry." "You have nothing to be sorry for," Dr. Whitfield said firmly. "Nothing." But I did. I was sorry for marrying David. Sorry for not standing up to Patricia sooner. Sorry for putting my unborn daughter in danger because I'd been too proud, too stubborn, too desperate to make a broken marriage work. The baby chose that moment to kick. It was small, probably weak from the stress, but it was there. Movement. Life. I started to cry, the tears hot against my cold cheeks. The paramedic checking my vitals smiled. "Strong heartbeat," he confirmed, the fetal monitor strapped to my belly picking up the rapid flutter of Sophia's heart. "Both of you are fighters." At County General, they rushed me into the emergency room. Nurses appeared with heated blankets and warm IV fluids. A doctor checked my vitals while another ran an ultrasound, checking Sophia thoroughly. Julia burst through the doors 15 minutes later, still in her pajamas, her hair wild. "Emma." She practically fell on me, then pulled back, afraid she'd hurt me. Oh my God. Oh my God, when they said ambulance, "We're okay," I said, and meant it. "Sophia's okay. We're both okay." "You're hypothermic and severely dehydrated," the doctor corrected, but gently. "Another hour out there and we'd be having a very different conversation. As it is, we need to monitor you both overnight. The stress could trigger early labor." "Whatever you need to do," I said. Julia grabbed my hand, her grip fierce. "I'm not leaving, not for a second. And I'm calling a lawyer first thing in the morning, the best one I can find. Because what they did to you," her voice cracked, "that's not just divorce material, that's criminal." Dr. Whitfield, who'd been standing quietly in the corner, cleared his throat. "I'll testify to what I saw, for whatever it's worth. And I'm fairly certain my wife will too, Patricia's threats notwithstanding." "Why?" I asked him. "Why would you do that? Patricia said your families have been friends for decades." "Because 40 years of country club lunches doesn't mean I can stand by while a pregnant woman is abused," he said simply. "Some lines shouldn't be crossed. Patricia and your husband crossed them tonight, and they need to face consequences." A nurse appeared in the doorway. "Mrs. Aldridge? Your husband is here. He's demanding to see you." Every muscle in my body tensed. Julia's hand tightened on mine. "Tell him no," I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "Tell him I don't want to see him. Not now. Not ever." "Are you sure?" the nurse asked gently. "He seems very insistent." "I'm sure." I looked down at my belly, at the slight movement under the blankets as Sophia shifted. "My daughter and I are done being treated like we don't matter. We deserve better than a man who would lock us out in the cold to please his mother." The nurse nodded and disappeared. A moment later, I heard David's voice rising in anger in the hallway, demanding access, throwing around his family name like it meant something here. It didn't. The nurse returned with a security guard, and David's protests faded into the distance. "Good riddance," Julia muttered. Then softer, "I'm proud of you, Em. That took guts." Did it? I wasn't sure. All I knew was that somewhere between the locked door and the ambulance ride, something had shifted inside me. The woman who would have apologized to Patricia, who would have begged David to take her back, who would have made herself smaller to fit into their world, that woman had frozen to death on that porch. The woman lying in this hospital bed was different, harder, colder in some ways, warmer in others. A mother bear protecting her cub. I'd begged them to let me in. Pleaded. Frozen. Almost died. And now I was going to make sure they understood exactly what they'd created when they locked that door. Dr. Whitfield excused himself after a while, promising to check on me tomorrow and to have his wife send the clothes I'd left at the house. Julia curled up in the chair beside my bed, refusing to leave despite the nurse's insistence that visiting hours were over. "I'm family," she told them firmly, "and family doesn't abandon each other in the cold." The dig at David and Patricia wasn't subtle. The nurses let her stay. As the hospital settled into its night rhythm, distant beeps, soft footsteps, hushed voices, I stared at the ceiling and thought about what came next. Divorce, obviously. But there was more than that. Patricia and David had committed what Dr. Whitfield called abuse. What if he was right? What if this wasn't just the end of my marriage but the beginning of something else entirely? My phone buzzed with a text. "David. I'm sorry. Please let me explain. Mother didn't mean for it to go that far." I deleted it without responding. Another text. "Emma, please. We can work this out. For the baby's sake." Deleted. A third. "You're being unreasonable. It was just a few minutes. Stop being so dramatic." That one I screenshot before deleting. Evidence, I thought. I was going to need evidence. Julia noticed me using my phone. "Is he texting?" "Yeah, he's sorry." I showed her the screenshots. Except for the part where I'm being dramatic and unreasonable. "What a catch," Julia said dryly. "I can't imagine why you'd want to divorce such a gem." Despite everything, I almost smiled, then winced as another contraction rippled across my belly. "Not labor," the doctor had said. Braxton Hicks, brought on by stress. But they hurt, and each one reminded me how close I'd come to losing everything. "Jules?" I said into the darkness. "I don't have anywhere to go. The house is David's family home. I don't have money. Everything's in his accounts. I don't even have clothes except what's at the house, and I'm sure Patricia will throw it all out now." "You have me," Julia said immediately. "My apartment isn't huge, but it's yours for as long as you need it. And as for money, didn't you have savings before you got married? The life insurance payout from Mom and Dad?" I'd forgotten about that. David had convinced me to put it in a joint investment account he managed. "For our future," he'd said. "For the baby's college fund." "He controls it," I said dully. "The account is in both our names, but he's the primary on it." Julia's expression went dark. "How much was in that account?" 300,000. The life insurance, the sale of my parents' house, everything. He said it had grown with investments. Last time I checked it was close to 400,000. "And you don't have access?" I shook my head. He said it was easier if he managed it since he understood finance. I trusted him. "Of course you did. You loved him." Julia pulled out her phone. "I know a lawyer. Not family law, but she'll know who to call. First thing tomorrow, we freeze that account. He doesn't get to take your parents' legacy on top of everything else. He'll fight it. Let him fight. You almost died tonight. You and Sophia both. A judge is going to take one look at that and your inheritance is going to be the least of David's problems." I wanted to believe her. Wanted to believe that justice existed, that good people won and bad people faced consequences. But I'd learned tonight that the world didn't work that way. Patricia had locked me out and felt justified doing it. David had helped and then sent half-hearted apology texts. Dr. Whitfield's testimony might help, but would it be enough against the Aldridge family's money and influence? Another text came through. This time from an unknown number. "This is Patricia. David tells me you're refusing to see him. That's your choice. But understand this. You will not take my son's child from him. You will not take his money, and you will not drag this family's name through the courts with lies about tonight. What happened was unfortunate, but you brought it on yourself. Come home, apologize, and we can all move past this unpleasantness. Continue on this path, and I promise you'll regret it. I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I screenshot it and forwarded it to Julia. She's threatening me, I said. Julia read the message, her jaw tightening. She's also giving you evidence. Keep every message, every text, every call, every email. Build your case. And first thing tomorrow, we're filing a restraining order. A restraining order? Jules, I don't know if... They locked you out in the cold while you were 7 months pregnant. You nearly died. That's not a marriage disagreement, Emma. That's assault. Maybe attempted murder for all we know. You need protection, and Sophia needs protection. Let the courts decide if I'm overreacting. She wasn't overreacting. I knew that somewhere in the rational part of my brain, that wasn't still in shock. But it was so hard to shift from thinking of David as my husband, the man I loved, to thinking of him as a threat, as someone I needed protection from. The baby kicked again, stronger this time. Sophia, my little fighter. She'd survived tonight's nightmare. Now I needed to make sure she never had to survive anything like it again. Okay, I said softly. Restraining order, screenshots, evidence, whatever it takes. Julia squeezed my hand. That's my sister. Now try to rest. Tomorrow we fight. Tonight you heal. But rest didn't come easily. Every time I closed my eyes, I was back on that porch, hearing the lock click, feeling the cold seep into my bones, watching Patricia through the window, sipping her wine, satisfied with her cruelty. They'd wanted to teach me a lesson, to show me my place, to break me into someone grateful just to be allowed back inside. Instead, they'd taught me exactly what I was capable of surviving, and exactly what I was willing to do to protect my daughter. Around 3 in the morning, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was Dr. Whitfield. Mrs. Aldridge, this is Harold Whitfield. I wanted you to know that my wife and I have decided to end our friendship with Patricia, effective immediately. We've also contacted our attorney to make a formal statement about what we witnessed tonight. If you need anything, a place to stay, help with legal fees, anything, please don't hesitate to call. What happened to you is unconscionable. You have our full support. I read the message 3 times, tears streaming down my face. Support. From near strangers who'd been there for me more than my own husband. Thank you, I typed back. I can't tell you what this means. His response came quickly. It means some of us still remember what decency looks like. Rest well. And tell that daughter of yours she's lucky to have a mother with your strength. Strength. I didn't feel strong. I felt broken, betrayed, lost. But maybe strength wasn't about feeling strong. Maybe it was about getting up anyway, about fighting back even when you were scared, about protecting your child even when everything else fell apart. I placed my hand on my belly, feeling Sophia's steady movements beneath my palm. We're going to be okay, I whispered to her. I promise you. Whatever it takes, we're going to be okay. I didn't know then how I'd keep that promise. Didn't know about the lawyer Julia would find, or the evidence that would surface, or the allies that would emerge from unexpected places. Didn't know that sometimes the worst nights of your life were just the beginning of something better. All I knew was that the door had locked behind me, and when it opened again, I would be walking through it as someone completely different. Someone Patricia Aldridge never saw coming. Someone who remembered every second of that cold, brutal night, and who would make sure it never happened to anyone else. The first rays of dawn were breaking through the hospital window when I finally fell asleep, Julia's hand still holding mine, my other hand resting protectively on my pregnant belly. They'd locked me out in the cold. They had no idea what they'd invited in when they finally let me back. The morning brought Detective Sarah Chen and her partner, a younger man who introduced himself as Detective Rodriguez. They stood at the foot of my hospital bed, notebooks in hand, expressions carefully neutral. Mrs. Aldridge, Detective Chen began, her voice gentle but professional. Dr. Whitfield filed a report early this morning. We need to hear your account of what happened last night. Julia sat up straighter in her chair, immediately alert. Does she need a lawyer present? She's not under investigation, Detective Rodriguez assured her. We're here because what Dr. Whitfield described constitutes domestic violence and reckless endangerment. Possibly more serious charges given Mrs. Aldridge's condition. I told them everything. The dinner party, Patricia's comments, my decision to finally speak up, the fight, and then the locked door. Detective Chen's pen never stopped moving across her notepad. When I got to the part about standing outside for nearly an hour, barefoot in the snow, her jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Your husband physically escorted you outside? She asked. Yes, but he didn't. I mean, he wasn't violent about it. He just guided me to the door and locked it behind me. Mrs. Aldridge, he forced you out of your home in freezing temperatures while you were pregnant and barefoot. That's violence. Detective Chen's voice was firm but kind. The fact that he didn't hit you doesn't make it less violent. The words settled over me like a weight. Violence. I'd been thinking of it as cruelty, as betrayal, as a terrible mistake. But violence? That word carried implications I wasn't ready to face. We have Dr. Whitfield's statement, Detective Rodriguez added. He's willing to testify that when he arrived, you were hypothermic and barely conscious. That your mother-in-law showed no concern for your welfare and actively tried to prevent medical intervention. That's not just domestic violence, that's criminal negligence. What happens now? Julia asked. That depends on Mrs. Aldridge. Detective Chen looked at me directly. You can press charges, given the evidence, your medical records, Dr. Whitfield's testimony, the text messages you mentioned. The DA would likely pursue this even without your cooperation. But it's easier with your statement. Press charges. Against David. Against Patricia. The mother of my husband and the father of my child. The idea should have felt impossible. But after last night, nothing felt impossible anymore. I need to think about it, I said quietly. Detective Chen nodded, unsurprised. She handed me her card. Take your time. But Mrs. Aldridge? In my experience, people who do something like this once will do it again, especially if there are no consequences. Think about what message you want to send your daughter about what's acceptable. After they left, Julia and I sat in silence for a long moment. You don't have to decide right now, she finally said. But Em? She's right. If David and Patricia did this once? I know. I cut her off gently. I know. I need to process this. Yesterday, I was planning to apologize to Patricia to save my marriage. Today, I'm supposed to send my husband to jail? Yesterday you almost died, Julia said bluntly. Yesterday your daughter almost died. I think that changes the equation pretty significantly. A nurse came in to check my vitals and change my IV. After she left, Julia's phone rang. She glanced at the screen and her eyebrows shot up. It's Melissa Thornton, she said. The lawyer I mentioned. She must have gotten my voicemail. Answer it, I told her. Julia stepped into the hallway. Through the window in the door, I could see her gesturing as she spoke, her expression intense. 5 minutes later, she came back in, her face flushed with excitement. She's coming here, right now. And she's not just any lawyer. She's the lawyer. She handled the Carmichael divorce last year, remember? Wife of that tech CEO who tried to hide assets offshore? Melissa got her everything plus criminal charges for fraud. I did remember. It had been all over the news. The wife had ended up with 70% of $1 billion fortune and the husband had ended up in prison. Jules, I can't afford someone like that. I have no money right now. Everything's tied up in David's accounts. She knows. I told her everything. She said she'll work on contingency plus a retainer that will settle after we freeze your assets. Emma, she wants your case. She called it deliciously winnable, and I quote, "Any judge who wouldn't eviscerate a man for locking his pregnant wife outside in December isn't fit to wear the robes." Hope, dangerous and fragile, sparked in my chest. Maybe this wasn't as impossible as it seemed. Maybe there was a way through this that didn't leave Sophia and me destitute and broken. Melissa Thornton arrived an hour later, and she was nothing like I'd imagined. Late 50s, silver hair pulled back in an elegant bun, wearing a burgundy suit that probably cost more than my car. But her handshake was firm and her eyes were sharp with intelligence. "Emma," she said, settling into the chair Julia vacated. "I'm going to be blunt because we don't have time for dancing around the issues. What happened to you last night was criminal. Your husband and mother-in-law committed at least 3 prosecutable offenses that I can identify immediately. The question isn't whether you have a case. You do. The question is, how far you want to take this." "I want my daughter to be safe," I said. "And I want David and Patricia to understand they can't ever do this again. To me, or to anyone else." Melissa smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a shark spotting prey. "Good. Then here's what we're going to do. First, emergency restraining order against both David and Patricia, filed this morning. Second, emergency motion to freeze all marital assets until we can get a full accounting. Third, we're going to pursue criminal charges in parallel with the divorce proceedings." Can we do that? File criminal charges? We don't file them. The DA does. But with Dr. Whitfield's testimony and your medical records, they'll file. Trust me, this is exactly the kind of case prosecutors love. Wealthy family thinks they're above the law, pregnant victim, clear evidence of malice and intent. She pulled out a tablet and began taking notes. "Now, tell me everything about your finances. Every account, every asset, every piece of property." For the next 2 hours, I laid out my financial life. The joint investment account with my inheritance. The house, David's family home, technically owned by a family trust that Patricia controlled. His salary at his family's investment firm. My complete lack of income since I'd quit my job as a graphic designer when we got married, at Patricia's insistence that Aldridge wives don't work. Melissa's expression grew darker with each revelation. "They isolated you financially," she said flatly. "Classic abusive pattern. Made you dependent, then used that dependence as leverage. Emma, how much do you know about David's actual income? He makes about $200,000 a year. At least that's what he told me. And the investment firm, who owns it? The family. Patricia, David, and his uncle Richard." Melissa made a note. "I'm going to need to depose all of them, because here's what I think happened. They've been hiding assets from you throughout your marriage. The house alone is probably worth $3 million. Add the business, David's personal holdings, and we're looking at a marital estate in the tens of millions." I stared at her. "Tens of millions? That's impossible. We lived comfortably, but not... I mean, David drives a Mercedes, not a Rolls-Royce. We eat at nice restaurants, but not..." "They controlled the narrative," Melissa interrupted. "Controlled what you saw, what you knew, what you had access to. It's called financial abuse, Emma, and it's going to work in your favor. Judges hate this. They really, really hate wealthy families preying on vulnerable spouses." "I'm not vulnerable," I said automatically. "You were last night." Melissa's voice was gentle but firm. "You were locked outside in freezing weather with nowhere to go and no resources. That's the definition of vulnerable. And that's what we're going to show the court." A knock on the door interrupted us. a hospital administrator, looking uncomfortable. Mrs. Aldridge? I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's a situation in the lobby. Your husband and his mother are here demanding to see you. They've been asked to leave, but they're refusing. Security is involved. Julia was on her feet immediately. I'll handle it. We all will, Melissa said, standing. She looked at me. Do you want to see them? Every instinct screamed no. But another part of me, the part that had been trained by 2 years of marriage to a man who valued appearances above all else, wanted to handle this properly, maturely, without a scene. Then I remembered the lock clicking shut. Patricia sipping her wine. David's apologetic voice saying, "Maybe a few hours out here will help you understand." No, I said firmly. I don't want to see them. Not now. Not until the restraining order is in place. Good choice. Melissa headed for the door, Julia right behind her. Stay here. We'll take care of this. Through the window, I watched them walk down the hallway toward the elevators. Alone in the room, I placed my hand on my belly. Sophia was active today, rolling and kicking like she was trying to make up for yesterday's scary silence. Your daddy's here, I whispered to her. But he's not here for you. He's here to save face, to look like the concerned husband. Don't worry, baby girl. We see right through it. My phone buzzed. Another text from David. Emma, please. Mother and I are at the hospital. Let me see you. Let me explain. This has all gotten so out of hand. We can fix this. I love you. I almost laughed at that last line. He loved me. Sure. The way you love a possession you're afraid of losing, not the way you love a person whose life and welfare matter to you. I typed back. Your love almost killed me and our daughter last night. Don't contact me again. My lawyer will be in touch. His response was immediate. Lawyer? Emma, you're overreacting. We had a fight. Couples fight. You don't need to blow this up into something it's not. But it was something. Something serious and dark and criminal. And I was done pretending otherwise. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my texts to Julia. How's it going down there? Her response came a minute later. Melissa is terrifying. Patricia tried pulling the "Do you know who we are" card. Melissa said, I know exactly who you are. You're the woman who nearly killed her pregnant daughter-in-law, and I have witnesses who will testify to that. Security just escorted them out. David was yelling about his rights. Melissa said his rights ended when he locked you outside. Despite everything, I smiled. Maybe I couldn't afford Melissa Thornton's usual rates, but it seemed like she'd decided to take my case anyway, and Patricia was about to learn that her influence had limits. When Melissa and Julia returned, Melissa was already on her phone scheduling hearings and depositions. She hung up and turned to me. The restraining order hearing is tomorrow morning at 9. Judge Matthews is hearing it. She's fair but tough. She won't tolerate any nonsense from the Aldridge family lawyers. She paused. Emma, I need to warn you. This is going to get ugly. They're going to try to paint you as unstable, as a gold digger who trapped David with a pregnancy. Patricia already tried that angle with me in the lobby. What did she say? That you deliberately got pregnant to secure your financial position. That you've been threatening David for months. That last night you threw a tantrum and stormed out, and they were just trying to teach you a lesson. Melissa's expression was disgusted. Standard abuser playbook: deny, deflect, blame the victim. But Dr. Whitfield saw everything, and his testimony will counter their narrative. But Emma, be prepared. They're going to try to destroy your credibility. They're going to dig into your past, your relationships, your finances, before David. They're going to look for anything they can use against you. Let them look, I said, surprised by how calm I felt. I have nothing to hide. I worked as a graphic designer. I paid my bills. I had normal relationships that ended normally. The only questionable decision I made was marrying into their family. That's the spirit. Melissa grinned. Now, let's talk strategy. The restraining order is step 1. Step 2 is the asset freeze. I'm filing that motion this afternoon. Step 3 is discovery. I want every financial document the Aldridge family has touched in the last 5 years. Step 4. She paused dramatically. Step 4 is where we get creative. Creative how? Julia asked. The investment firm. If they've been hiding assets, cooking books, any financial irregularities, we find them and we report them. To the SEC, the IRS, whoever needs to know. Because Emma, here's the thing about wealthy families who think they're above the law. They usually are breaking the law. We just have to find where. It felt like opening Pandora's box. But then again, David and Patricia had opened that box when they locked me outside. They'd made this war. I was just learning how to fight it. A different nurse came in to discharge me. My vitals were stable, Sophia's heartbeat was strong, and the doctor felt comfortable sending me home with instructions to rest and follow up with my OB in 2 days. Home, I repeated hollowly. I didn't have a home anymore. My apartment, Julia corrected. I already made up the guest room. It's small, but it's warm and safe, and no one's going to lock you out. As we prepared to leave, my phone rang. An unknown number. Normally, I wouldn't answer, but something made me pick up. Emma Aldridge? A woman's voice, professional and cool. Yes? This is Jennifer Harper from the Aldridge Family Trust. I'm calling to inform you that as of this morning, you've been removed from all family accounts, and your access to the residence at 1247 Oakmont Drive has been revoked. You have 72 hours to collect your personal belongings, which must be done with a police escort, and without taking any items that predate your marriage to David Aldridge. I felt Julia tense beside me. Melissa, overhearing, held out her hand for the phone. I gave it to her. Ms. Harper, this is Melissa Thornton, Mrs. Aldridge's attorney. What you're describing is illegal lockout and conversion of marital property, as of... She checked her watch. 20 minutes ago, I filed an emergency motion to freeze all marital assets. That includes the residence. Mrs. Aldridge has every right to access that property, and if the locks have been changed, you can expect a court order by end of business today requiring access be restored. There was silence on the other end. Then, I'm simply following Mrs. Patricia Aldridge's instructions. And I'm informing you that those instructions violate California marital property law. Unless you want to be named in a lawsuit alongside the Aldridges, I suggest you call Patricia and tell her to stand down. Mrs. Emma Aldridge will collect her belongings when and how she chooses, without time limits and without oversight. Melissa's voice could have frozen fire. Are we clear? I'll relay your message to Mrs. Aldridge. You do that. Melissa hung up and handed me back my phone. They're panicking. That's good. Panicked people make mistakes. We left the hospital through a side entrance to avoid any media. Apparently, Dr. Whitfield's report had leaked to the press, and there were already reporters in the main lobby asking questions about the pregnant woman locked out by wealthy family story. Julia's apartment was in a converted warehouse in the Arts District, all exposed brick and large windows. The guest room was indeed small but bright, with a double bed covered in a sunflower-patterned quilt. It's perfect, I told Julia, and meant it. It was warm. It was safe. No one here would hurt me. That night, lying in an unfamiliar bed, I felt Sophia moving and wondered what kind of world I was bringing her into. A world where her father had betrayed her mother, where her grandmother was a monster, where her parents' marriage had imploded before she was even born, but also a world where her Aunt Julia would drive through the night to rescue her, where strangers like Dr. Whitfield would stand up for what was right, where lawyers like Melissa would fight for justice. My phone buzzed with an email. I almost ignored it, but the subject line caught my eye. You need to see this. The sender was an address I didn't recognize. Inside was a single attachment, a scanned document. It took me a moment to understand what I was looking at. Then my blood ran cold. It was a prenuptial agreement, signed by me and David, dated 2 days before our wedding. The terms were brutal. In the event of divorce, I would receive nothing. No alimony, no property settlement, no claim on any assets acquired during the marriage. The problem was, I'd never seen this document before. That wasn't my signature. I sat up, my heart pounding, and forwarded the email to Melissa with a single line. They forged my signature on a prenup. Her response came within seconds. Screenshot everything. Forward me the original email. Don't delete anything. Emma, this is fraud. We've got them. I stared at the document, at the careful forgery of my name. They'd planned this. Even before we were married, they'd been planning for the day they might need to discard me. Patricia's insurance policy against the day her son married someone beneath his station. But they'd made a mistake. They'd been so arrogant, so certain of their power, that they'd left evidence. And now that evidence was going to destroy them. I placed my hand on my belly, feeling Sophia's steady kicks. Your grandmother made a big mistake, baby girl, I whispered. She thought she was dealing with someone weak, someone who would break and beg to come back. She doesn't know what she created when she locked that door. Tomorrow the restraining order hearing, then the asset freeze, then discovery, where we'd tear apart the Aldridge family finances and find every dirty secret they'd been hiding. They'd locked me out in the cold to teach me a lesson. Now I was going to teach them one. And by the time I was done, they were going to wish they'd left that door open. The courtroom was silent as Judge Matthews reviewed the forged prenuptial agreement. 3 weeks had passed since that frozen night on the porch, and winter had given way to early spring. My belly had grown larger, Sophia more active with each passing day. Mr. Aldridge, Judge Matthews said, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. Are you telling this court that you had no knowledge of this fraudulent document? David's lawyer, an expensive shark named Carson Webb, stood quickly. Your Honor, my client maintains he believed the prenup was legitimate. If there was fraud, he was as much a victim as... Save it, counselor. The judge's expression was ice. I've reviewed the handwriting analysis. The document was created on a computer registered to Patricia Aldridge and printed from her home office. The notary whose seal appears on this document has testified, under oath, that Mrs. Patricia Aldridge paid him $10,000 to backdate his signature. Your client may claim ignorance, but his mother certainly cannot. I watched Patricia's face drain of color. She sat ramrod straight in her designer suit, but her hands trembled slightly on the table. Beside her, David looked smaller somehow, diminished. Melissa leaned close to me. We've got them, she whispered. Judge Matthews wasn't finished. Furthermore, the forensic accounting has revealed a pattern of financial manipulation that borders on the criminal. Mr. Aldridge, your investment firm has been siphoning funds from your wife's inheritance account for 2 years. $380,000 to be precise, moved into offshore accounts in your mother's name. Your Honor, we can explain... Carson Webb tried again. I'm sure you can. I'm sure you have a dozen explanations prepared. But here's what I see. A young woman, pregnant and vulnerable, systematically isolated from her own money, locked out of her home in freezing temperatures, and nearly killed through deliberate neglect. Then, when she sought help, her signature was forged on a document designed to leave her destitute. Judge Matthews removed her glasses. I've been on this bench for 20 years. I've seen abuse in many forms. This is among the worst. The gallery behind me was full. Dr. and Mrs. Whitfield sat in the front row, both having testified yesterday about what they'd witnessed. Julia was beside me, her hand gripping mine. And in the back, I'd spotted several reporters taking notes furiously. "Mrs. Emma Aldridge," Judge Matthews addressed me directly, "I'm granting your petition for divorce. Furthermore, I'm awarding you the following: full custody of your unborn child with supervised visitation only for Mr. David Aldridge, contingent on completion of domestic violence counseling. The marital residence will be sold and proceeds split 60-40 in your favor. All stolen funds from your inheritance will be returned with interest and penalties. You will receive spousal support of $15,000 monthly for 5 years." David's face had gone white. Patricia looked like she might faint. "Additionally," the judge continued, "I'm forwarding the evidence of fraud and embezzlement to the district attorney's office. Mrs. Patricia Aldridge, you should expect criminal charges to be filed within the week." "Your Honor!" Patricia finally found her voice, standing abruptly. "This is outrageous. Do you know who we are? The Aldridge family has been a pillar of this community for generations. You cannot—" "Sit down, Mrs. Aldridge." Judge Matthews's voice was steel. "I know exactly who you are. You're a woman who locked her pregnant daughter-in-law outside in 20-degree weather to teach her a lesson about obedience. You're a woman who forged legal documents and stole hundreds of thousands of dollars. Your family name means nothing to me in the face of such cruelty." She banged her gavel. "This court is adjourned." As we stood to leave, David tried to approach me. Security stepped between us immediately. The restraining order was still in effect. "Emma, please," he said, his voice breaking. "I never wanted any of this. Mother convinced me it was the right thing, that you needed to understand your place. I never thought— I didn't mean for you to almost die." I looked at him, this man I'd once loved enough to marry, and I felt nothing but pity. "You stood there and watched her pour wine while I froze outside," I said quietly. "You sent me apologetic texts instead of opening the door. You let your mother steal from me, lie about me, and nearly kill me. And you're still blaming her instead of taking responsibility." "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry." "I know you are. But sorry doesn't change what happened. Sorry doesn't make you a father our daughter can trust. Sorry is just a word you say when you're caught." Melissa touched my arm gently. "We should go." As we walked out of the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Melissa had prepared me for this moment. "Mrs. Aldridge, what do you want people to know about domestic violence?" I paused on the steps, Julia beside me, my hand resting on my pregnant belly. Behind me, I could feel David and Patricia being escorted out a different exit, avoiding the press. "I want people to know that abuse doesn't always look like bruises," I said clearly. "Sometimes it looks like financial control, like isolation from friends and family, like being made to feel small and grateful for whatever scraps of dignity you're allowed to keep." I took a breath. "And I want people to know that the moment someone locks you out, literally or figuratively, that's the moment you find out who you really are. I found out I'm stronger than I ever knew, strong enough to protect my daughter, strong enough to demand justice, strong enough to walk away from people who should have loved me but chose cruelty instead." The reporters asked more questions, but Melissa guided me to the car waiting at the curb. As we drove away, I watched the courthouse recede in the rearview mirror. "How do you feel?" Julia asked. "Lighter," I said, surprised by the truth of it. "Like I've been carrying a weight I didn't even know was there, and someone just lifted it off my shoulders." 3 weeks later, I was back in court for Patricia's arraignment. She pleaded not guilty, of course, but her lawyer's confidence had crumbled. The evidence was overwhelming: the forged prenup, the embezzled funds, witness testimony about the night she locked me out. Her trial date was set for September. David, facing no criminal charges but thoroughly humiliated by the publicity, had moved out of state. His visitation rights when Sophia was born would be supervised and limited. I'd agreed to that much, not for him, but for my daughter, who deserved the chance to know her father, even if that father had failed in every meaningful way. The investment firm was under investigation by the SEC. Their clients were fleeing. The Aldridge family name, once synonymous with prestige and old money, was now synonymous with scandal. And me? I moved into a small house Julia helped me find. Nothing fancy, but mine. Bought with the first installment of the returned inheritance money. I set up a nursery in soft yellows and greens, decorated with butterflies and sunshine. I reconnected with the friends I'd lost during my marriage. I started freelancing again, taking design jobs that made me happy instead of made me rich. On a warm April morning, 3 weeks before my due date, Dr. Whitfield called. "Emma, I wanted you to know, Patricia took a plea deal, 5 years probation, full restitution, and permanent restraining order preventing contact with you or your daughter." "No jail time?" I was surprised. "Her lawyers are good." "But Emma, she's ruined. Her friends have abandoned her. The country club revoked her membership. She's radioactive in the social circles she valued above everything else. Sometimes the punishment is perfectly fitted to the crime." He was right. Prison would have been easier for Patricia than exile from the only world she cared about. "Thank you," I told him, "for everything. For standing up that night. For testifying. For being the kind of person who does the right thing even when it's hard." "Thank you for being brave enough to fight back," he replied. "You've inspired more than you know. My wife has started volunteering at a women's shelter. We're funding a legal aid program for domestic violence victims. You changed us too, Emma." When Sophia was born in early May, Julia was with me. Not David. He'd waived his right to be present, sending only a generic congratulations card and a check his lawyer had written. I held my daughter, this perfect tiny human with dark hair and curious eyes, and I cried. Not from sadness, but from overwhelming relief. She was here. She was healthy. She was safe. "Your grandmother tried to break us," I whispered to her. "But we don't break. We bend, we survive, and we come back stronger. That's what you need to know about the women in this family. We're made of steel wrapped in silk." Julia snapped a photo of us, me exhausted and radiant, Sophia sleeping peacefully in my arms. Later, she'd frame it and put it on my mantel. A reminder of the night that broke me and the morning I became whole again. 6 months later, I was pushing Sophia's stroller through the park when I saw them. David and Patricia, sitting on a bench, looking diminished and gray. They didn't see me at first, too absorbed in their quiet conversation. I could have walked past, could have avoided them entirely. Instead, I stopped. Patricia's eyes met mine, and for just a moment I saw something flicker there. Regret? Shame? I'd never know. "She's beautiful," Patricia said quietly, looking at Sophia. "Yes," I agreed. "She is." "I'm sorry," Patricia whispered, so softly I almost didn't hear it. "I'm sorry for what I did to you." Sorry. That word again. The word that meant everything and nothing. "I hope you mean that," I said. "I hope someday you understand that the only person who lost everything that night was you. You had a chance to gain a daughter. Instead, you made an enemy. And then you lost your son, your reputation, your life, all because you couldn't let go of control long enough to show basic human decency." I started to walk away, then paused. "For what it's worth, Patricia, I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace. My daughter deserves to grow up with a mother who isn't weighed down by bitterness. So I forgive you. But I'll never forget. And you'll never be part of our lives." As I walked away, Sophia cooed softly, reaching for a butterfly that danced past her stroller. And I realized that was exactly what we were. butterflies who'd fought our way out of a cocoon that was meant to destroy us. They'd locked me out in the cold to break me. Instead, they'd set me free. And that freedom was worth more than all the Aldrich fortune could ever buy. The end. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.